I'd like to introduce Mr. Serson, who is Tyler's mentor. Mr. Serson is my friend, my colleague, and I'm proud to say a WISE mentor this year, and we thank him for participating in the program this year. I think it really adds a nice element to the WISE program.
Wow, Fran is right. I haven't spoken in front of this many people in a long time. Well, listen, I wanted to, by the way, people in the back, if I start talking too long, just raise your hand, because I have a tendency to like to hear myself talk. So I'll keep this brief. I want to get Tyler up here. Not yet, Richard, you're great. My name's Doug Serson. I've been teaching here for about 13 years. So I've actually been here for most of WISE's existence. And when I first got here, I remember being introduced to the program and finding it really fascinating. And yet, I could say about 5 or 6 years ago, I kind of retired from doing WISE as a mentor, largely because WISE is really hard. It's hard on the mentor, it's hard on the mentee. It's a hard process. And I guess I always found that, you know, of the students that I had, they all did really well, but I always kind of just felt like it had to be held to a super high standard. And so I kind of got to a point where I said, you know what, it's a lot of work. Maybe I'm going to step aside and let other sort of mentors step up. So I got in this habit, and it happened again this year, that every year I've been very blessed with having students come to me and ask me to be their mentor. And I just got in this habit of just sort of not even really looking up and just saying no. And then after a long explanation, I explained I've kind of retired from WISE. So I guess in about November or December of this year, after class, because I had Tyler in class this year, I look up and Tyler's sort of standing over my desk after class, and he says, Mr. Serson, I want to know if you'd be my mentor. And I didn't even want to look up, I just said no. I looked up and I said, oh, Tyler. And Tyler didn't go away. So we started talking, and we started talking more about his project. And in the course of that discussion, I realized a couple things, that Tyler was a pretty special individual, which was the primary reason I ultimately said yes. But he also started talking about his project, which he's titled Handmade, which you're going to learn a lot more about when he gets up here shortly. And I immediately had sort of a connection to that. And I was not disappointed. And Tyler is the first student that I've said yes to in a number of years, and he's the first model presenter that I have, that I've had. So I think I made an excellent choice. I'll just say this too, that if a mentor is lucky when they go through the process of doing this WISE experiment, this WISE journey, that when you come out on the other side, you've got this really phenomenal relationship that you develop with the student. But in my personal experience, almost more important is that you wind up with this incredible project. And Tyler wanted to do a lot of different things, and I'll tell you, he'll tell you about those mostly. I just want to end with this, is that, again, in terms of doing it right, which is what we both agreed he wanted to do, Tyler did it right. So if you're a junior in here watching this, I really want you to pay attention to that. If you want to do it now, you're welcome to. If you look at Tyler's program and you look in the back, I have to say, Tyler will probably blame me. I'll say I was largely responsible, maybe that's taking a little bit too much credit, for the works cited page that he has in the back. If you look at the number of resources that he has consulted during this journey, I think it just speaks to the depth with which he explored this topic. I'm not going to say any more because Tyler's going to say much more about it other than this, that working with you, Tyler, was more than a pleasure. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really happy for you. And why don't you come up here and take it the rest of the way.
We on? All right. How you guys doing today? Doing all right? Listen, I'm so happy that you could all come out today, listen to me speak. You know, first off, I just want to say that I'm just so honored to be up here today and just kind of share a little bit with you about who I am as a person, and that this project is so much more to me than just a project. You'll see that. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyler Joseph Brown. I'm 17 years old, and I live in Stonebridge, New York. I live with my two parents, Nick and Chris Brown, and my brother Aaron, along with my two cats, Chloe and Oliver. Now, it's funny, but if someone had asked me who I was about 4 months ago, that's probably the answer I would have given them. Through WISE, I really was able to look deeper into who I was as an individual, and really just sort of come to understand a lot more about myself. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, why choose WISE? What's so special about WISE? You know, I have to say, September of my senior year came around, and from the start, Franny, I knew her from Newcomers, and also my friends, they literally badgered me nonstop about, you have to do WISE, you have to do WISE, oh, you love it, you have so much fun. And my response was, no. Just like Mr. Serson's first response was to me, no. I didn't want to do it because I thought it was, for me, I really thought it was a waste of time. There was no point. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to put in the energy to do it because I just saw it as something that was just so menial. It had no point to it. But it was really wrong because it did. And so finally I said, okay, fine, I'll do WISE. Big deal, whatever. So then of course I came to the next problem. What do I do for a project? Why choose the project that I chose? Well, see, I like working with my hands, I always have, whether it's something that's very minuscule and detailed or whether it's more of a, I don't know, say bulwark kind of physical labor type stuff, whatever it is, I find enjoyment in it. So I knew that that was something that I wanted to do, and I wasn't really sure what. But then, okay, now let me ask you a question. How many of you guys, right before you go to bed at night, you're all ready to go to bed, you're just like, you want to unwind from your day, and this idea pops in your head, and you can't go to sleep. Come on, raise your hand. I know it's happened to almost every single one of you. It happened to me. It happened to me, and it really was not fun. I mean, it was great because I was inspired, but at the same time, it was very irritating because I couldn't go to sleep. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call my project Handmade, and it's going to be almost a documentation about all my experiences through my hands-on work. And not only that, but I want to do some research to see what really goes into people's projects when they work with their hands. So then, of course, you come to the next problem. You need a mentor. Now, Mr. Serson kind of talked about it a little bit already, but that was something that was very easy for me, but also very challenging. It was easy because there was only one person that I wanted as my mentor, and that was him, because not only did I admire him as a teacher, but also as an individual. And it really kind of, you know, at first I was like, you know, I don't have anybody else. I need a backup, but I couldn't find one. So I went to him and I asked, and his response was no. And so then I said, well, I'm going to come back the next day, and I'm going to ask you again, see if I can find somebody else. Did I find somebody else? No. Did I even try to look for somebody else? No, because I knew that he was the one that I wanted to be my mentor. So, of course, you know, we got to the point where, okay, now I have a mentor. Now I have everything that I need. So now what I want to do, I'm going to double check just to make sure that I am where I want to be. Oh, yes, I am. Now I want to take you guys to this, and I want you to look at this picture. Now this picture means a lot to me. Now some of you are not going to get the concept behind this picture, but I'm hoping that as I begin to explain myself and explain my project, that you will come to understand that there is so much value in this picture. And so I want to start right now. Now, the first thing that I really want to talk about before I begin is that in order for me to sort of look into some of the careers and various hands-on jobs that sort of are part of my project, I had to do some research. And so I sort of was toying around with some different ideas, and I'm like, all right, let me see what I can do with this, let me see what I can do with that. So then I came to the first thing, and I said, well, let me think about work ethic. Because when I think of hands-on work, I think about work ethic. It's important to me. I think it's important to the people that look at their hands as well. For me personally, my parents taught me sort of the concepts of work ethic and what it means to be a hard, good worker. And you know, for me, it was taught at a very, very early age, so I always knew how to get a job done and to do it right and not to cut corners. And it really kind of changed my idea for the way that I felt about this project, because work ethic was one of the main concepts behind this project. Now, on top of that, the one thing that I want to talk about, in addition to just work ethic in itself, is that it's something that's intrinsic. And I believe that we all possess the ability to have an amazing amount of work ethic within us. It's just that we have to find it, we have to tap into it. And so, you know, I understood that, okay, so work ethic is this concept. It's this thing that allows us to do what we do. But then why do we do it, you know? So we have this. So I thought about it, I'm like, well, work ethic is something that we value. So with that being said, I wanted to look into values, and I'm like, all right. So through some research, I came to a conclusion that our values are based off of three things: our experiences, our friends and family, and our beliefs. Now, specifically with beliefs, And really, I would rather just say all in general, values are something that they allow us to determine whether something is undesirable, desirable, acceptable, or unacceptable. And they literally create the basis for which we form our lives around. And I think that you could all attest to that it's true. We all value different things, and that is completely okay. As a matter of fact, that is awesome because I love that. I completely love that. Now, the other thing with values is that I know for me personally, values are expressed through my work. Whenever I'm doing a hands-on job, I always sort of, I take a moment and I'm like, wow, you know, I step back, I look at it, and I'm like, let me look at this for a second. And I'm like, everything that I did throughout that job, throughout that process is a form of my values. It's the way that I express my values. And so that really kind of took charge of me, and I said, well, I want this project to also be about me expressing my values so that I can show people who I am. Now, from values, I said, okay, well, I enjoy working with my hands. I like working with my hands. Now, but why? Why do I like working with my hands? So I kind of went into some other concepts and tried to play around with some other things, and I came to this: fulfillment and job satisfaction. Now, this is something very interesting, because for me, it's one of those things where, like I said, I'm working with my hands, I enjoy it, I find fulfillment and satisfaction within that. Now, fulfillment as a whole is something that's more on a personal level, whereas job satisfaction is something that's on a more professional level. Of course, both are ways in which we can find happiness and creativity from within ourselves. Now, the other thing about values is that, or not values, oh boy, that's not good. With fulfillment and job satisfaction is that in order for somebody to go into a career field, I personally believe that they need to be satisfied and that they need to find the enjoyment and the fulfillment within that career so that they can do what they do and enjoy it and not feel miserable and not just make it that cookie cutter 9-to-5 job every day. Now, of course, before you can even get a job, you have to have an education. And so, but then the thing is, well, what's the deal with education? And not only education, but creativity. And I want to stop and I want to talk about creativity for a second, because that, for me, is something that is extremely important. It's very, very important to me. And this is my thing with creativity. I walk up and down the halls every single day, and I say to myself, what happened to creativity? Where did it go? I don't see it. Matter of fact, I don't know if I ever really saw it, because I don't know if it was something that I've ever really observed, especially as a younger, kid. I don't know if I've ever really seen that, and that it's hard, it's unusual, it's different. Where did it go? And I realized something as I did some research. I realized that technology has played a huge factor. Now, some of you might disagree, but keep your opinions to yourself. Technology has completely changed the way that we look at creativity. Technology, in a sense, has almost pulled creativity from our society to the point where creativity is given, not found. Now, why is it given and not found? Because there's an app for that. You can go anywhere you want. You can go on your iPad or your smartphone, and you can make some sort of collage or photo-generated manipulation for free. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't even need to feel inspired. You can just go on and boom, it's done. There's nothing special to it. And it really bothered me. But it also bothered me that not only has creativity been pulled away from our society due to technology, but creativity has also, to an extent, been pulled away from education. And now, the thing with that is very fascinating, because I was reading an article in the New York Times, and it said this. It said that now, in the 21st century, more than ever, students, college graduates, are going out into the world and they are creating their own jobs because they cannot find them with the education that they have been given, because there aren't jobs available for them. And it really bothers me so much, because one of the things that I think really needs to go along with education is not just creativity, but inspiration. Inspiration needs to go along with that. And within that article, there was also a man, and this man's name was Tony Wagner. Now, Tony Wagner, for those of you who don't know, and I highly doubt any of you know who he is, because I didn't either, Tony Wagner is a professor at Harvard, and he said this in the article. This is what he said. He said that our goal is not to make every student college ready, but is to make them innovation ready. ready for whatever it is to add value to whatever it is that they do, add value to that. And that really fascinated me because of this. You know, we need to have education, we need to have a background, but we should have a skill behind that. We need to be inspired to go out and to get your job done. Now, I would like to kind of switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about something a little different. I'm going to talk about literature for a second. I bet all you guys love books. How many of you guys love to read? Come on. No, I don't either. Sorry, Mr. Serson. In college prep writing, we read a play by Arthur Miller called Death of a Salesman. And in Death of a Salesman, the main character, Willy Loman, inevitably chooses the wrong career. And he chooses the wrong career, and it later leads to his tragic downfall. And in the end, Willie takes the car out for one last ride, and he doesn't come back because he commits suicide. Now, there are many different reasons. People have come up with a lot of different reasons for why Willie did that. Obviously, you know why, but aside from that, one could infer that Willie was just, he realized the fact that he had failed his family. He failed himself, and he failed his family. He failed to provide for them, because he chose the wrong career. He wasn't happy with his career. And because he wasn't happy, he was unsuccessful. And so in a last-ditch effort, Willie takes out the car, tries to commit suicide, because his hope is that he will be able to take the insurance money that is collected from his death and from the car accident to provide for his family. Sad thing is, ironically, Willie's coverage didn't cover suicide. And so his family is still left unprovided for in the end. And that obviously just made the play extremely tragic. But there's something very inspirational at the end. In the Requiem, as his friends and family are gathered around his grave, there's some dialogue going on. And they say some very interesting things. And these four things, these quotes that I'm going to tell you right now, really impacted me a lot. Really, really, really made me think. The first thing was that they said this: Willie was a happy man with a batch of cement in his hands. He was so wonderful with his hands. There was more of that man in the front stoop of their house than anywhere else. But he had all the wrong dreams, because Willy Loman chose the career of a salesman. He was not cut out to be a salesman. He was meant to be a carpenter or a tradesman, because that's what he valued, that's what he loved to do. And if only he had done that, he would have been so much happier. He would have been so much more successful in his life. And it really made me think, wow, who would have even dreamed in a million years that this stuff would be in literature? I know that I wouldn't have thought that way. And it's crazy, because it made me think that all these concepts that I've shared with you so far, work ethic, values, fulfillment, job satisfaction, career and education, that all of these things so far, they're in the world around us. They're floating around in this room right now. We can't even see them. And that's the thing that fascinates me the most. So now, I want to continue on from Death of a Salesman, and I want to talk a little bit about multiple intelligence. Now, we'll come back to this a little bit later, but I want to talk about it for a second. Now, as I said, everybody's different, and they're unique, and I love that. And I think that we should all love that about each other, because that's what makes us who we are. And I think with that being said, going back to Willie for a second, you can say that Willie, because he chose the wrong career, he was unsatisfied. He wasn't cut out to be that kind. He wasn't meant to be a salesman. And so, multiple intelligence. I want to talk about that. Now, how many of you have ever taken an IQ test? Raise your hand. Okay. You take the test, it's like, you know, or maybe you're on Facebook or something stupid and something pops up. Take this IQ test, see how smart you are. Share with your friends, all that crap. So you look at it, and it gives you like, oh, I have a score of 120, I'm a genius. Oh, she has a score of 80, she's dumb. Well, that's stupid, because that test is completely inaccurate. Because it's only testing your ability, your logical abilities. It's not testing all of the other abilities that you have within your own being. There was a man by the name of Professor Howard Gardner, and he proposed a theory that there's not just one form of intelligence, but 8. Hold on. 8 forms of intelligence. Yeah, I can count. Go figure. So with that, people have been able to decide their strengths and weaknesses, and people see who they are based off of this. And you will realize, as we come back to this later, that you are the way that you are for some very specific reasons. Now, in order for me to sort of better understand all of these concepts, these 8 concepts that I've explained to you so far, I decided, I don't know why I decided this, because, I don't know, maybe it's because it's one of the criteria for wise. I don't know. I had to interview some people. So I interviewed 3 individuals, all very special individuals. Now, these 3 men that I interviewed, they know, and they can attest to this, it is so much more than just working with your hands. It's a lifestyle, and it's a passion. Now, the first person that I want to talk about is Andy Finnegan. Next slide. Perfect. Now, Andy is a lathe turner. And, you know, before I had met Andy, I had no idea what a lathe turner was. Actually, there was a news article that was placed in my Wise mailbox, and I read it. It was actually from Franny. And I thank you for that, Franny, so much, because that really just, it created an awesome friendship is really what it did. And so, Andy is a lathe turner. This is what Andy does. He uses a large machine known as a lathe to create true pieces of art. He uses large metal tools called gouges. They're basically just really long chisels, knives if you will, that he uses to chisel out and carve, to turn chunks of wood into bowls, vases, whatever it is. And that really fascinated me because I'm like, wow, never really would have thought that somebody could actually do something like that. I didn't think it was possible. But then I met Andy. And you know, I even got a chance to try it. And let me tell you, it's not easy. It is not easy at all. It's fun, but it's not easy. So of course, with that being said, you know, one of the things that I really, you know, connected with Andy on was the fact that a lot of what we have learned in our lives has been taught to us through our fathers. And that really meant a lot to me, to know that somebody else has the same sort of connection with their parents, with their parents that I have, with their father. And that really kind of made me think, and it made me feel so special. And so, on top of that, you know, one of the things that really struck me about Andy too is that there's so much concentration and dedication that goes into what he does. Now, if you look right here on it would be your left, my right, your left. Right there at the bottom, we have this assortment of spheres, if you will. And these, all 9 of them, 9, right, Andy? All righty. 10? Oh, 9, okay. A little dark down there. There's a total of 9 of them. Now, this piece is called the black sheep. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the reason why it is called the black sheep is because you have the smaller piece of African blackwood that is being ostracized by the rest of the group. And that is why it is called the black sheep. Now, this is very special because when I first interviewed Andy, this was just a concept. He only had a couple of them. He didn't have the full piece turned yet. Well, this piece won first place at the 2013 Totally Turning Convention in Saratoga, New York. And when I came back, to Andy's house several weeks ago, I snapped a picture with him. And when I came back to get that picture, this thing was done. He was telling me about it. He was telling me all about, you know, how it took him over 2 months to turn this, and how so much of his life has been invested into this project, into this piece of art. And then that's when I said to myself, I'm like, that's it. It's more than just a job. It's a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. Now, I want to talk about my next interviewee. His name is Chris George. Now, Mr. George is a contractor. He's a little bit different from Andy in the sense that he's not so much of an artist per se. He's more of hands-on. He does a lot of different things, whatever it is. He's helped build dozens of homes. He's helped assemble dozens, if not almost 100, I couldn't even tell you, modular homes, and he's poured over 100 concrete foundations. This guy knows how to build a house. I'm telling you, he does. Now, I've known him for a few years, about 4 years or so, but the one thing that, I really liked about him was the fact that, really from the beginning when I first met him, was the fact that he's the kind of guy that knows how to get her done. He really does. And he lives by that. He lives by that term every day because he knows that if he doesn't put value into the work that he does, then it's pointless. There's nothing to it. He always tries to give the customer the best that he can because he knows that he has something to offer to them that is very special. He has a skill. He has an ability. You know, the one thing, when I think about it, that really just, I was quiet when he told me this. I was like, wow, that's cool. And I was just so lost in thought. Because he said this, although he's a contractor, and his initial goal at the end of the day is to turn an honest profit, as opposed to an artist who really is just doing it for, you know, the creative journey. He said this to me. He said, the greatest jobs in this world are not done for pay. They're done for your friends and your family. They're done for the people that need your help the most. And I think that's true. And it really kind of hit home. And I was like, yeah, it's true. Finding fulfillment in whatever it is that you do, find it. Find it, add value to it, and make it something that you can call your own. Now I want to talk about my last interview. I want to talk about Steve Stewart. Now Steve is a potter. You name it, he can throw it. What's throwing, you might ask? Of course, you're probably wondering what's throwing. Well, I'm going to tell you what throwing is right now. Throwing, in general, is a term that's used in pottery to define the entire activity of shaping the clay on the potter's wheel. That's what it is. If you've ever seen a potter throw on a potter's wheel, that's what it's called. It's not turning, it's not spinning, it's throwing. Go home and tell that to your parents. Exactly. Now, one thing about Steve that I really thought was so cool was the fact that when he was a younger man, he grew up in California, and he worked at a pottery factory. I don't know if there are too many people that can say that they worked in a pottery factory, because now all that stuff is done in China. You can go to Pottery Barn and buy a bowl for 99 cents on the dollar, and it was made in China. There's no value to it because there's nothing special to it. But Steve gives value to all the pieces that he throws, and he does that because he knows how important it is. Now, it was fascinating because he said that when he worked in the factory, the owners were very flexible. And it didn't really matter how the piece got done. As long as the quota was filled at the end of the day and the pieces all looked identically the same, it didn't matter. And he said that's where the real fun came into play, because we got to expand our creative horizons and really look into the different fields of techniques of how to make things, how to make them work, and how to make it look right, get it done right. Now, the one thing about Steve too, another thing, is that he's an artist. He's an artist, but he's a businessman. He's a businessman because he has to be. He has to be because if he's going to survive in this world today as an artist, he needs to do everything that he can do to provide for his family. So he has to use all of his talents and his abilities to enable himself to provide, to establish that basis. Because as an artist, I think we could all say that being an artist is not easy. You don't have to know one, you don't have to be one. It's not easy because creativity doesn't just happen. It has to come from somewhere else. It has to be inspired through something. But he said that if I'm going to conform with the economic conventions of our society, I have to abide by certain rules and certain things so that I can live. And it really made me think. I was like, wow, that's a lot. And not only that he just said that, but back to the pottery, working in the factory, I was like, wow, there aren't too many people that can say that. And I was really honored, I truly was honored to meet a man who had done something like that. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit once again. I want to come out of the interviews. I want to talk about my Likert Scale survey. Multiple intelligence as well. Now, the one thing about all of the things that I've shared with you so far is that now I know what everybody does. I kind of have an idea of these different, things that make people who they are. But why? Why? What makes the men that I interview do what they do? What makes me do what I do? What makes each and every single one of you do what you do? And so, with the help of Mr. Surson, we created a Likert Scale survey. Now, this survey was intended for college-bound seniors. Specifically, would use my college prep writing class as guinea pigs. So if any of you are out there, I really can't see, but if you are, yeah, college prep writing, you know what's up? Second block, 2AC. You know, the funny thing is, you know, I used you guys as my guinea pigs, but you really made a whole world of difference to my project, and it was really awesome. Now, let's skip to the next slide, one more. We're going to talk about some of the results of that Likert survey. You know, 72% of the class said that work ethic was extremely important to them, and that blew me away. It really did, because I was like, you know, I pass these kids in the hallway every day, and I never would have guessed in a million years that so many of them really value work ethic as much as they do. And that, in addition to that, I also looked into job satisfaction. I asked them, well, what's more important, income or job satisfaction? I was surprised to see 36% of the class said that income was more important than job satisfaction. And, you know, it's sad, but it made me think, you know, I know that we always say, well, this is what makes the world go round. It's so sweet, but it's not true. It's not true. Money really does make our world go round, and sometimes it makes our world go round so much so that we are controlled by greed and envy and everything else. But it made me think, you know, job satisfaction, income. For me, I'd rather be more satisfied than get paid, because I want to be able to value what I do, want to bring that value that I have to what I do, and I want to find fulfillment in it. Let's go to the next slide for a second. I want to talk about two more. Now, students were asked how often they engage in a creative hands-on project. Surprisingly, 28% of the class said that they engaged in a creative hands-on project about once a month. And the other 28% of the class said that they work on a creative hands-on project multiple times a week. Multiple times a week. And I know 28% doesn't seem like a lot in a class of like 25 kids, but for me, it was a lot. Because it was way more than I ever thought. To think that so many kids actually do work with their hands. They do things creatively at the very least on a monthly basis. You know, I was expecting to have like more than half the class, 72%, if not more of them say never. And I was like, that's nice. That makes me feel good about what I'm doing, to know that I'm not the only person out there that enjoys creative hands-on projects. Now, there are a lot more results that stood out to me, but those are the four in particular I didn't do creativity, so we're going to do that right now. Creativity, they were asked how important creativity is to them. It was a 36-36 split. Now, there's a total of 72% if you just look at the overall importance of it, forget the extremely, just the importance. And that really, once again, was just a result that I thought was so awesome, to see that so many kids value creativity. But it also kind of struck me because I wish I could see it more. I wish I could see it more in everybody, and not just the kids in my college prep writing class, but everybody. I wish I could see that, because I think it would make our world, it would make our school a much better place. Now, I want to switch a little bit. I want to talk about multiple intelligence. Now, I'm going to give you a brief explanation on multiple intelligence. As I had said before, it was a theory that was proposed by Professor Howard Gardner. And that of these 8 intelligences, these are the ones that I have for you. If you could just switch the slide, that'd be great. Thank you. All right. Now, as you can see, I have a diagram up here with all the different intelligences, and I'm going to read to you what some of them mean, because I know some of them look a little weird, like, what's kinesthetic? I didn't know until I looked it up, so you're not the only one if you don't know. Now, for people who are kinesthetic, they have the ability to use their bodies well. For people who are interpersonal, they have the ability to sense other people's feelings. They can be in tune with others. People who are spatial have the ability to know where they are in a fixed location. They can visualize 3-dimensional objects and concepts. Intrapersonal people have the ability to look inside of themselves and to philosophically reflect and think about all the different things. They have that ability. Now, people who are linguistic have the ability to communicate well with others. People who are logical and mathematical have the ability to handle complex mathematical problems. How many mathematicians do I have out there? Raise your hand. I'm not one of them. Raise your hand. Good for you guys, because I can't do it. Can't do it at all. Musical people have the ability to learn, perform, and compose any kind of musical concept. And naturalistic people can classify specific things and can understand the different species in nature. Now that's just a brief explanation of each one. I don't expect for you to remember all of them, but I want to go for a second to the next slide. Just hold it there for 1 second. Now, initially, after the Likert scale survey, we had all the students take a test, and we had them take Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence test to see where they ranked in the various areas of multiple intelligence. Now, initially, students would answer yes or no to a specific question in a specific column. Then, at the end of the exam, students were asked to add up the number of yeses and the number of no's in each column to get a specific calculation. From there, they would subtract the number of no's from the number of yeses in each column, and they would come up with a number. And that number would determine either a strength or a weakness in that particular category. Let's go to the next slide for a second, and I'll show you guys an example. Now, career choice is a good one. And, you know, people could go a bunch of different ways with it, but I want to talk about career because for me, that's very important. Now, this student specifically would be encouraged to pursue a career as an auditor, an accountant, a scientist, a computer analyst, a surveyor, an architect, or an administrator, because the mathematical and logical skill, along with the visual and spatial skill, work very well together. They mix together very well, and they would make for a great combination in one of those careers. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you student number 2. It's a little bit different. Now, this student would be encouraged to pursue a career as either a speech pathologist, a psychologist, a social director, a journalist, or a lawyer. A little different than the previous student, but yet you can see how everything kind of balances out a little bit, that they are very linguistic and verbal. Yet, at the same time, they are also interpersonal, but that everything kind of balances itself out. They would be more likely to pursue a career in one of those. Now, there are many more careers that I could list with the different graphs. Am I going to? No, because we'd be here all day, and I know it's a Friday. I understand. I get it. The weekend's here. All of it. So, now, with that being said, I want to take you to something very special to me. I want to talk about something. I want to bring you back to this concept. I want you to see, you can look within this image, you can see all the different pictures from all my different slides, and you can see that this board, my longboard, the thing that I created with my father for my WISE project, is something that it has such a great amount of intrinsic value because it is the heart of my project, it is the soul of my project, it's the nucleus of my project, that everything revolves around it. And that if it wasn't for just one concept, if I just went in and I picked out different ones, my board would not be what it is. I don't know if my project would be what it is. I know it wouldn't be. Now, without further ado, I want to show you something. I want to show you my longboard. Took over 4 months to complete. I only thought it would take us about 2, but I was really wrong. We have over 50 hours in this board. And then my dad and I calculated that if we were to make this board for anybody today, identical to what I'm holding in my hands right now, we would charge no less than $1,200 for this board. Because of how much labor and materials and time went into making this. Would I ever sell this? No. Because this is my project. This is who I am, and there is so much more to this than just a skateboard. I want to show you how I made it, because I think in order for you to understand the value behind it, you need to see how it's made. I want to take you to that right now. I want to take you on a journey. Now, we started off, in order to make the shape of the board, it's hard to see, but maybe you can see that there's a slight bevel, there's a concave to the board in the way that it's shaped. Now, the reasoning for that is because we had to create a mold. We created a mold so that we could give it a shape, give it a definition. Now, I went on Google SketchUp and I created this board template, which was then cut out and we traced it onto these templates. We created these ribs, these concave ribs, if you will, and we used them. And then what we did, I think there's about 13 or 15 of them, I can't remember, but either way, we cut them out on a table saw. We used a dado blade, which is a special blade. It cuts out large sections of wood at a time as opposed to just a thin little cut. And so we used that and we created channels within those ribs. And now if we go to the next slide, you'll see that from there we created these splines and we placed them into the channels and we placed them along this board to create the mold, to create the initial shape of this mold. Now, the thing that's special about this is that if we didn't have those long sticks, those splines in there, the mold, when the board was being made and molded to this, it would then collapse upon itself because it didn't have any kind of structural integrity. And you can see, I brought the mold with me right here today. It's standing right in the middle. You can see it. And that if there was no mold, there would be no board. And so now if we go to the next slide, you'll see this large, funky-looking table thing. And you're probably wondering what that is, and you see some sort of technological instrument. Well, that's a vacuum bag. Now, how many of you guys have ever compressed meat, where you've seen it on TV, some sort of like a meat compressor, you got to suck it out, keep it dry, and, away from all freezer burn and stuff? Okay, well, this basically does the same thing. It's a vacuum bag. It has a special vacuum technology that it literally applies equal amounts of pressure to every square inch that is inside of that bag. Whatever's in there, it's going to clamp it down. It's way more efficient than a conventional clamp job because it has equal amounts of pressure. You might, when you're clamping something up, you might turn it just a little too tight on one, and that could literally warp the entire board, the entire project, and it's done, but not with this. So we placed the board, or rather we placed the mold into the vacuum bag, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see that you have the impression of the mold inside of the vacuum bag. You can see how it seals itself. And we placed a piece of wacky wood on top of the mold. Now, wacky wood is different from conventional plywood because it conforms to things. Whatever it is, it will conform to whatever is being placed on, as opposed to something that will just break. Regular plywood is just going to snap, but wacky wood doesn't. It bends and conforms. And so we use that to create the top surface layer of the mold. And you can see it standing up there, and you can see it right there on stage. Paper is for glue drips, so it protects itself. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see a bunch of different things happening. What's happening? I'm making the board. This is the start of the board. It's finally here. You're wondering, oh, great, he's got this mold. Big deal. Ooh, moldy. But then you'll see that we have this 5-foot by 5-foot sheet. I doubt you can visualize that because I would have no idea either. But it's a 5-foot, 5-foot sheet of 8-inch thick Baltic birch plywood. Now, we cut those into 4 sections, which then we glued one on top of another. We sandwiched them, we laminated them on top of one another. Then we placed the mold into the vacuum bag, and then we placed the glue up, the laminate, on top of the mold, and we closed the bag. And if you go back a couple slides, go back one more. Yeah, right there, up back. You'll see, as I showed you before, you see how it compressed? That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when it's compressed. Now we can go back to where we were before. Alrighty. Now, once it was placed in there, you go to the next slide, you'll see this funky looking bunch of blankets. It looks like some hobos living under there, whatever. No. There's no hobo, I promise. They're heated blankets. And the point of the heated blankets is to create a curing effect. So that way, on top of the compression that's being placed on top of the mold and the laminates inside the bag, the heat will actually allow the glue to cure a lot faster. Still, it was in there for about 6 or 8 hours. Now, once it came out, you can see, if you look on the middle one, you can even see a slight concave to it, right there in the picture. And that's how it conformed to the mold. That's what gave it its shape. Now, I traced an old longboard, because I really like it. I like the classic look to it. It's very simple. There wasn't a lot of detail. It was just simple. And so I traced it out onto this laminate. And from there, we placed it on, we took it and we brought it to the bandsaw and we cut it out. It wasn't easy. My dad did one side, I did the other. You can see on the one side, you can see a little bit, maybe you can't, it kind of waves a little bit. That's my side. My dad did the other side. It's almost perfect, but when you're doing woodwork for almost 30 years, and you have to know how to do that stuff. Of course, for me, whatever. Try it. So then if you go to the next slide, you see the board standing upright. But to the left of that, you'll see that the board really, to the left, yeah, I'm getting good at this. It's kind of weird being up on stage. So we used a belt sander and some other various grit sandpapers, and we sanded it out to make it as streamlined as we possibly could, because that was very important to me. It was important to my dad too, but it really was important to me that this board just looked perfect, because it was the symbol of my project. I wanted it to be my project. It is my project. You can see the board right there, nothing special, just the plywood. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a bunch of different things happening. Well, what we did on top of that to create this grainy look that you see right here is we used a special wood. We used something called veneer. Now, for those of you who don't know what veneer is, it's literally just paper-thin sheet of wood. And a lot of furniture makers use it, and it's most commonly used for giving furniture pieces an aura, if you will, without actually having to use a solid chunk of wood. It's literally just a sheet that you glue on. It's real wood, it's not plastic, it's real, but it is paper thin, and it is some of the coolest stuff you'll see. It's just weird, it's so weird. But what we did was we cut out a sheet of Movingi. Now Movingi is an African satin wood. It's not like, oak or any kind of American hardwood. It's very different. You can see that if you look, you can see the grain pattern. It's not swirly, it's not like a regular tree, it's very different. That's why it gives it that satin look. And so what we did was we used contact cement. We glued these sheets of Movingi to the top and to the bottom of the board. Now the top of the board is called the deck. The bottom of the board is just the bottom, nothing special to it. But then you can see in the upper corner, you see how everything's sitting on a chair. Well, the reason why they're sitting on chairs is because, once again, contact cement has to cure before it can be applied to anything. It creates a much stronger bond. The molecules compress together. And so from there, we placed it in the vacuum bag, as we did with everything else prior. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the deck of the board, how Movingi was attached to the top. Now, we also did the same thing to the bottom. And if you look all the way on the other side, you can see the underside, which would be the bottom portion that was going to go on the board next. Now, if you look right here, you'll see that the board has been clamped down to a table. This is where we removed all the excess veneer from the edges of the board to give it that streamlined look. Now, once everything was removed, if you go to the next slide, you'll love this. That's what the wood used to look like. We used a Minwax Golden Oak stain, and it came out beautifully. It really just made the grain within the board pop. And when the light hits it, it's unbelievable. You take this thing out on a sunny day and it just shines. It is so beautiful. And the best part about it is it's all natural. It's natural wood. It wasn't made in a factory. This is the natural impression of what the wood looks like. And it really, really gives the board an awesome look. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see a bunch of cans. What we did was we sprayed the board with a waterproof polyurethane lacquer. Now, traditional longboard makers would usually use fiberglass and fiberglass mesh, and they go through that whole process. They have to brush it on, and it's very messy. It's very, very messy. But my dad had these products laying around, and he said, let's give it a shot. Let's just see how it works, because this will allow the board to withstand huge amounts of humidity without being affected by the elements. So we sprayed it. I think we have probably about 2 to 3 coats on both the deck and the bottom of the board. From there, once we sprayed it, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we have a drill press. Now this press is literally, the name speaks for itself. It's a drill press. It drills holes. And if you can see in the picture, we drilled holes. I created a template that would match out the holes for which we would mount the hardware. And we drilled the holes in both the nose of the board and the tail of the board so that we could mount the trucks and the rest of the hardware. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see a grip tape effect. Matter of fact, you'll see this stencil effect. And you're probably wondering, what's the point of that? Well, first off, this stencil effect, just to stencil it, put it on, cut everything out, and then peel it off. It took me about 7 hours just to do that. And now, what this did was it created a stencil for which I would spray the grip tape on. Now, how many of you have either ridden a skateboard, you've seen a skateboard, you know what a skateboard is? All right. Really, is that it? Come on, you guys all know. All right. Good enough. Now, when you look at the top of a regular skateboard, you see that the top of the board, the deck of the board is black. It's gritty. There's something weird on it. Well, that's called the grip tape. Now, I used a different kind of grip tape because my grip tape is not black. It's clear. I used a special product, and I sprayed on this clear grip tape to give it this effect. You can see in the light, maybe you can, maybe you can't. It's a little hard, but all the stenciling is the initial shape for the grip all the way down the board. It makes the board flow. It makes it move with the grain. If you go to the next slide, you'll see this product. I used the blue one in the middle. It's called Lucid Grip. I'm not advertising. I'm not trying to throw anything out there. I'm just telling you what I used. But the product worked really well for me. Kind of a pain, but I got it. I've never used it before. It was really cool, though, because it did not disrupt the integrity of the grain on the board. You can still see the grain on the top, and yet it went on really nicely. So from there, go to the next slide, you'll see there's the board, and you'll see up in the top, you can barely see, there's a little piece of blue tape. That's after like the 7th hour of me finally peeling all that stuff off. It was a pain. I don't know if I would have done it like that. Maybe I won't do it next time, but I don't know. It was fun. It definitely gave a cool effect. Then I mounted the trucks. Now the trucks are these little bad boys right here. Perfect. All right. Now, the thing with the trucks is that they were yellow. I spray painted them flat black. I did that because I originally thought the yellow would be cool, but I think the black turned out a lot nicer just because it's classic and it's simple. Now, I want to show you guys the final product, the board. You see it from 3 different angles. You see it right here in my hands, but now you see it on the screen. You can see how the light hits it even more just with the camera. This is my longboard. It would not have been possible to have made this board if it wasn't for so many different people. And without further ado, I'd like to begin my closure. I'd like to just say thank you to some people. Before I do, I want to say 2 things. The first is that to all the WISE students out there, just because I'm up here today doesn't make me any better than you. It doesn't make my project any better than yours. And it doesn't make your presentation any better than mine. If anything, it should make yours better than mine. It should make you better than me. You have even more time than I have. You can still get her done. You can keep going. You know how to slowly shift and doing the goal and doing that. You can keep doing it. Believe in yourself. Don't stop. Go full force. 100%. Don't stop. Before I say thank you, I want to say to all the juniors out there, I believe, like Franny had said, that there's going to be an opportunity for each and every single one of you to participate in WISE next year. Give it the best that you can give it. Do all that you can. Make it about you. Make it about what you want to do. Because never in your life before have you ever been able to do something by yourself, completely by yourself. Nobody's telling you what to do. You get to sail the course. You get to determine where you want to go. Now I want to thank some people, because this board, this project, everything that has happened today would not have happened if it wasn't for these people. I want to thank these people. I want to thank Mr. Surson. Mr. Surson, you are so much to this project. You have been my support. You have been everything in this project. I cannot thank you enough. I'm so honored that I was able to be your mentee. It means the world to me. It really does. I mean that. I want to thank Franny. Franny, I need to thank you for giving 110% to this program this year. I know it was difficult. I know we had some challenges. You make this program the best that we can make it, and make this the best 15th, the one and only 15th anniversary of WISE, and next year it will be the 16th anniversary of WISE. And I want to believe in all the students who believe in me. Thank you for that. I need to thank Andy. I want to thank thank Andy, I want to thank Steve, and I also need to thank Mr. George. Thank you to all three of you for allowing me to interview you. It meant the world to me. It really did.
Andy and Steve!
I want to thank my mom and dad because I love you guys with all my heart. You guys mean everything to me, and if it wasn't for you, I don't really know what I would have done, let alone I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for any of you, for you, for my family. Thank you guys, I love you. I want to thank all the staff. I want to thank Mr. Agostero and all the rest of the board members for coming out today. Thank you for coming to hear what I have to say. I'm very honored. It means a lot to me. I know that you guys are busy. You're trying to run a district. You're trying to get her done yourselves, and you came here to see me. That means a lot. It really does. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank, I don't think he's in the room, but is Mr. Maloney here?
Maloney!
He's not. If he was here, I'd say this to him. I'd say, thank you for teaching me how to use Photoshop. I mean that because I had him as a teacher in Intro to Media Arts, and I had him as a computer graphics teacher. And every time I use Photoshop, I think of him. And for all the rest of you that have taken his classes, you know what I'm talking about. Every time you've ever used Photoshop, if you've used it outside of his class, I'm sure you think of him. You think about sitting in that class in the air conditioning, working on his computers. Of course, when I took his class, he didn't have Macs. So whoever's in his class now, count yourself blessed. Now, I want to also thank Mr. Pearson. Mr. Pearson, thank you for allowing me to use the facilities, the lighting and everything. I want to say thank you to everybody back in the booth, to Brian. I want for the lights. I want to thank Matt for being the slide man. I want to thank Eric for the film. I appreciate it. And anybody else that's back there that I can't see, I want to say thank you to you guys. Who? Really? Thanks, Henry's camera. Now, I want to say thank you to Ms. Schneller. I don't know if she's here today. You are? Hey, Ms. Schneller. I want to say thank you so much for offering all of your services during the WISE class in the Skinny. It really meant a lot to me, the fact that you were there, that you always made yourself available, not just to me, but to all the other WISE kids that were there. It really meant a lot. I saw your hard work and dedication, and I value that. I really do. I want to thank the WISE Task Force for the opportunity to be here today, to be the WISE model presenter, and I need to thank one person. I don't think I'm going to, but I don't know. We'll see. From the beginning, this project was dedicated to one person. One person only. This project was dedicated to my dad. Because I love him so much. You helped me with this board. You've given me so much time in your life. And I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you for everything that you've done for me and for our family. Ooh, a little teary. And I love you. I love you so much. You know who I am. I am Tyler Joseph Brown. This is my WISE project. This is, no, hold on. This is my longboard. I'm not in skate shoes either. Try riding it with an arch. It's not easy. But I want to thank you all for coming out today. It's been a true honor. It's been a pleasure. This is my WISE project, and I just want to say thank you.